The conclusive battle between Universe 7 and Universe 11 continues as the final 4 minutes draw closer to zero as Jiren begins to reveal his true power in hopes of defeating Goku, Vegeta, Android 17, and Frieza as the fate of both universes are on the line in this epic and climatic showdown. But the question is, can our heroes be able to pull through, or is this truly going to be the end of Universe 7 as Jiren begins to reveal why he is the mortal in which not even a Hakaishin can defeat by revealing more of his terrifying power onto the surface against Goku and Vegeta as Android 17 meets his ultimate demise as he collides with the ultimate Pride Trooper. What is going on, Dragon Ball fans? Welcome to my Dragon Ball Super episode 127 breakdown review entitled The Approaching Wall, the Final Barrier of Hope, leading into next week's exciting episode of Dragon Ball Super episode 128, which promises to be the conclusion of Vegeta vs. Jiren, as we know based on spoilers alone that this is going to be Vegeta's final moment as he clashes against Jiren. And what an episode this was. The struggle, the dominance, the sheer brutality of what Jiren had to offer against our heroes was just painfully obvious in the idea that without Ultra Instinct, our heroes stand little to no chance in surviving. And as we begin to near the conclusion of the Tournament of Power, things are really starting to pick up in the idea that right now in the tournament, there are only 3 people remaining, that being Goku, Vegeta, and Frieza, in battling a full-powered Jiren. And again, if you guys like the Dragon Ball content that I provide on this channel, then make sure you guys punch that subscribe button with notifications enabled to be the first to receive all the latest in Dragon Ball content and be a part of the Dragon Ball squad. And also, don't forget to follow me on these social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, to stay connected with me at all times, hashtag Dragon Ball Squad. As we go into Dragon Ball Super episode 128, it is painfully obvious that at this given point, that nobody is seemingly even remotely close in matching Jiren in power, and this episode provided great substance as to establishing Jiren's character further and finally finding out a bit of a backstory as to where he comes from, pretty much where he stems from as a fighter. And as we go into this breakdown, we are going to talk about the pros and the cons from my perspective in watching this episode, because as good as this episode was, it did present minor flaws that I felt like could have been addressed a long time ago instead of just giving us everything all in one shot now that the series is coming to an end. But I will say Dragon Ball Super episode 127 actually introduced something to where it really left us speechless as to the end result of what happened with 17, Jiren's backstory, and even the episode preview to where we get to see Vegeta take an ass whooping unlike any other. He's literally standing there with a black eye and thinking about his wife Bulma while in attempts to stopping Jiren and wringing him out. But by the end, it looks like this is going to be Vegeta's final moment, as in this episode particularly, we got to see the death of a character. Now, as a means, we got to see the death of Android 17. Android 17 sacrificed himself as a means of self-destruction in preserving both Goku and Vegeta in this ring by the very end. Now, this episode was good for many reasons. Number one, we finally got to see Frieza fight Jiren, both in his final form and in his golden form. And as a means, there was a process to where Frieza got involved in knocking Jiren through a pile of rocks, and after he had done so, he garnered Jiren's attention. But then even as, Frieza put up an effort, it was meaningless by the very end, as Jiren not only knocked Golden Frieza out of his form, but knocked him out completely with just one punch. Now, another aspect to this episode which was really enjoyable was Jiren's backstory. Now, Jiren's backstory is the fact that now he's very relatable to Bruce Wayne, he's very relatable to Batman, to Sasuke, because his original backstory is Jiren had nothing. His family was killed by an evil person, and as a means of a direct result, he had nothing, and the only thing he had was his own strength to help him, as he was saved by his quote-unquote master, but even his master at a certain point ended up dying as well. Now, before we dive any further into this episode, I will give this episode some criticism in giving us a little bit more or less of Jiren's background now. I mean, right towards the end of the tournament, when they could have done that way prior in the show. Now, what I mean by that is we've gotten so much filler content from the Tournament of Power by trying to execute Ribrianne, by trying to utilize Gamisaurus and Daemon, by trying to introduce all of these fodder characters that really weren't important to the show and really had no substance in terms of providing any sort of quality to this tournament, they decide to more or less go into Jiren's history now that the tournament's over, as opposed to building up his character this entire time. Now, the way they've been building up Jiren this entire tournament was more or less like a silent killer. He was like one of those stone cold type dudes where he didn't really say much, but when it came down for Jiren to throw down, he threw down. So I think that that was a good aspect, but we didn't really know anything about him. He never really spoke that much, and if you guys remember, and looking back when the tournament first started up until this very point, we get to see more or less development happen with his character. He's beginning to speak more, he's beginning to show signs of character development in terms of, you know, displaying emotion, and that's all fine and dandy. But in this fight with Goku, Vegeta, 17, Jiren was utterly brutal, and I really do love his display of power, because when he began to power up, you saw like auras on top of auras, and it was just so majestic because we haven't seen something like this in quite some time. And for Vegeta, I will give Vegeta some criticism, not to the point where I quote unquote hate the character, because I don't. I've always loved Vegeta since Dragon Ball Z, and that's more or less all of the little dick brigade soldiers coming in trying to make an excuse on the idea that, to me, I felt as if after the final explosion, that should have been it for Vegeta, because if you think about it, it's the final freaking explosion. I mean, how in the world is this man even standing is beyond me. I respect how he's still going, but I just felt, logically speaking, after utilizing and executing all of your energy in the form of one singular explosion, that should be it. But yet in this episode, he's able to go Ultra Super Saiyan Blue, which is fine and dandy because Vegeta is, you know, really fighting with his pride. He's really trying to go in there and prove a point here, which I completely understand. But in an esque, it didn't make any sense to see him transform further after it was stated by Beerus that Vegeta had no energy left. So I enjoyed his fight with Goku. Don't misconstrue my words. Don't try to put words in my mouth. I don't hate Vegeta. I don't hate any of these characters. You can't logically hate fictional characters. I mean, let's just remove our heads from the sand here for a second, and let's just be logical in the idea that you really can't hate fictional characters. I really do appreciate and love so many of these Dragon Ball characters, with the exception of probably just one, and that's Brienne, based on her poor development and her annoying, you know, character utilization in the aspect of just, you know, talking about love all the damn time. But Vegeta, I mean, props to him. He did good. I can't wait to see what's gonna happen next week, because now it's just down to 3 versus 1, and this one dude is fodderizing everybody. I mean, it's kind of remarkable how this entire time he's been one of the only ones to preserve his stamina, which is smart, so props to Jiren on that one. But it's mind-boggling to me how, you know, we got to see more or less more development for each character as the tournament's winding on down, especially I would have to say for Jiren, now that we understand where he comes from. And I really loved how, you know, Belmont even asked Android 17, well, what is your wish? Do you know what our history is? Do you know what Jiren's history is? And I loved how they went into a flashback and more or less telling that story, because we wanted to know what happened with Jiren. We wanted to know as to everything he's been through, why he is the way he is, and we finally got that explanation. But I would also say that in this episode, 17, the way he put up those barriers and protecting both Goku and Vegeta, it was very noble, because by the end, as a means of 17 killing himself, it led to Goku and Vegeta and Frieza's survival, as they are the only ones left in the ring. And we see, based on the episode preview, that Vegeta is going to be thinking about his family. He's going to fight with whatever he has left, and I think that at some point, because Goku in this episode, he was really, you know, on and off with his performance, because every single time he went down, he stood down, whereas Vegeta kept getting back up, and props to him for that. But Goku at this point kept tapping back into Kaioken. And the sequences, let's talk about the fight sequences. The fight sequences in this episode were amazing, because everything they did against, you know, Jiren failed. And there was even a point where they ganged up on him 3-on-1, and it was still nothing. And that reminded me so much of the Broly movie, because when they ganged up against Broly, you know, Broly just completely fodderized everybody. But here, it was a different level of fodder. I mean, Jiren casually, just by swinging his arms, was able to knock away Goku, knock away Vegeta, knock away 17. And this episode pretty much solidified 17's importance by always being there for Vegeta, always being there for Goku, protecting them by any means. And even as Goku and Vegeta told him, run away, don't engage him, run away, don't engage him, he still stood there in engaging Jiren despite whatever happened. So, you know, 17 realized that, and 17 put up a good fight. I would say, again, once again, 17 is the damn MVP, bro, because everything he did was not only strategic, as Goku and Vegeta fought Jiren and he was staying back, just trying to pick his spots while firing off energy blasts. 17 really did pick his spots, and I really do appreciate the way they handled the character, because by the end he knew he was fighting a losing battle, but he knew that even if you know, Goku and Vegeta and Frieza were there, they have a better chance than how he would, and thus, you know, saving himself and everybody else, he detonated himself and killing himself as a means of getting the blast away. But Jiren doesn't look like he cares at all, because by the end, Jiren is still standing and he's still taking everybody on without even, you know, just breaking a sweat. So I'm very curious as to how they're gonna end this, because the way Jiren operated in this episode was just, it was scary, because what more can you do against somebody who just cannot go down? They choose not to go down. Everything that Jiren put out in this episode, we saw the display of raw dominance as he took everybody on, because he wasn't fazed in the least by anything that Goku, Vegeta, or 17 were doing. And you guys can look at it from like different standpoints and saying, well, it was bad writing, or it was good writing, or perhaps maybe they tried to preserve Jiren's character. I felt like this story needed to be told a very long time ago for them to better understand, or at least give us a better understanding as to where the character stands, you know, his, you know, obsession with strength, and why he's so obsessed, and why he's so strong, because he had nothing coming up. His master died, and I loved the overall utilization of the way they didn't allow everyone else to speak as much, but it was more or less like a fight feel, because once it came down to Jiren powering up and the way he powered up, when you saw his massive auras and this energy, nobody could believe what they saw, because they felt such power come from this guy that they were just polarized as to what they were looking at. But despite being in a position to where they couldn't really fight back the way they wanted to, they got their asses handed to them. But I really do believe that by the end, because it's Dragon Ball, I mean, we're bound to see 17 come back, we're bound to see, you know, I guess you could say peace be restored. But it really baffled me as to how they gave Jiren the Bruce Wayne story, because it's not like it's original, it's been done before, but the way they explained it, it's a tad bit different. But that also kind of makes you wonder as to what his wish truly is, because as a warrior, it's not like he's purely evil, but he does have a history, and that history is very painful. So I just also feel like Vegeta and 17 have been the highlights of Universe 7, but also you have to give props to Frieza, because as I mentioned earlier, seeing Frieza jump in when he needed to, because at that given point 17 was down, Vegeta was down, Goku was down, and as Jiren overlooked them about to, you know, deliver the finishing move, Frieza stepped in. And I love Sumitomo's music when Frieza's swinging there and he's vowing that he's gonna eliminate Jiren, and Jiren didn't even say a word. He just, you know, uppercutted him in the chest and then punched him in the face, and that was pretty much that. So I loved how Frieza in every single episode just comes out the blue and he surprises you, and I feel like you need that from his character, because I was really concerned about Frieza's character in this tournament, because I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't think that he was going to be more or less involved, and now that he's involved more so than how I thought, I really did grow a natural respect for him as a fighter, as someone that isn't on the side of justice, is fighting because obviously he wants to obtain the Dragon Balls for his own selfish desires. It's notable, it's there, but I really did enjoy how Frieza stepped in and he did his business, because the music was ominous, the way he fought was ominous, because Frieza knew that he was fighting a losing battle, but he still hung in there anyways, throwing hands and kicking and doing whatever he could to get the upper hand. But Jiren is so scary because he fought everybody and then beat everybody. The only thing I didn't understand was how 17 blew himself up, you know, as a means in deflecting that blast, because the only other way for 17 to have, I guess, you know, evaded that attack, or at least got that attack away from Goku and Vegeta, was to blow himself up. But I just felt like it was a tad bit tacky how, once again, you know, as we saw the Spirit Bomb hit Goku in episode 110, and as 17 killed himself, there's no penalty to Jiren. There's no penalty at all. And I guess it's just pure for entertainment purposes for them to do that, but I just felt as if they should have acknowledged something, or they should have said something along the lines of, okay, well, there is no killing allowed, even though technically speaking, you can look at that as a kill, because it was Jiren's attack that was you know, breaking through his barrier and forcing 17 to blow himself up. But it's really weird, but I really do like how unexpectedly they give you that kill, because we knew that 17 was gonna get eliminated, but not like this. And I felt personally that the way he went out was really noble, because 17 gave his damn life to protect everybody. So in comparison to last week, it's really hard to compare, because I think both last week and this week were really good. I mean, they were really enjoyable for their own rights, but that's why I want to ask you guys as to whether or not you guys liked episode 127 more than episode 126. I'm a little conflicted just because I think both episodes were really good, and I already called it, you know, straight up that, you know, this tournament, once it was begin to die on down, it was gonna get really good. Lots of action, no filler, no bullshit, and I really do enjoy how this entire time, ever since the 9-minute mark from episode 122, it's been nothing but war. It's been war with Dispo, Gohan, Frieza, Goku, Topo, Jiren, Vegeta, and I really do appreciate that a lot. So, you know, in the end, this was a really good episode, in my opinion at least. If you guys disagree, let me know. But by the end, 17, he was once again the MVP, and props to him. But up next is Vegeta, and we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there, because honestly speaking, I don't see how Vegeta's gonna make it out of this one. But in the end, I would like to know what you guys have to say down in the comment section below. What are your overall thoughts on the background of Jiren? What are your overall thoughts as to what happened with Android 17? What are your overall thoughts as to Jiren emitting more power than how we've ever seen before? And it's a good thing, because I feel like now they're starting to open up with Jiren's character even more, even though, like I just said, I feel like it's a tad bit too late, because you had this entire tournament to establish this character, and you kept him as a cold assassin, which again isn't really a bad thing, but I felt like they could have done more as they continued on with the tournament. But instead, we get more or less a bit of a background to his character now, and I want to get your take as to what you guys expect to see in the upcoming episode. Thank you all so much for watching. Once again, if you guys are new to this channel, hit that subscribe button, guys. Turn on all notifications. We're just about to break 450,000 subscribers. I really can't believe it. I mean, it's something that I didn't really expect to see even happen on the channel, so thank you all so much for that. I love you guys, and I can't even begin to express my gratitude any more than being thankful as I am right now. So thank you guys so much. Thank you all so much for watching. If you guys are not following me at Twitter and Snapchat, I will leave links to those down below. Tune back in for more, and I'll be seeing each and every single one of you guys down in the comment section below. Take it easy, guys. Cue my outro, bitch.